Warning: viewer discretion is advised. Hi friends, welcome to Meals To Unalive For, where we talk about a true crime case and I make a meal from scratch. I'm your host Jody Breton, and if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Today we're talking about a man dubbed the Yosemite Killer, also known as Cary Stayner, and if you haven't heard of him before, it's about to get crazy. Cary was born August 12, 1961 in Merced, California. He was the eldest of 5 and had 3 younger sisters and a younger brother. His parents were Delbert and Kay Stayner. At age 3, Cary was diagnosed with trichotillomania and was put on medication, but continued to have bald spots, which led to ruthless bullying. Now, if you don't know what trichotillomania is, I also had to look this up, but it's basically when someone self-harms by pulling out their hair. So, this was something that Cary struggled with most of his life. He would pull out his hair in order to basically regulate emotionally. It was said that Cary's parents were pretty distant emotionally. His mother would ignore him when he cried and just would not pay attention to him. And eventually, Cary would stop crying and would resort to pulling out his hair as another means. Cary's father was also pretty distant. One of the only ways that he did bond with Delbert was through nature. So they would take many trips to Yosemite or to the lake or the river, wherever they could to get outside. So that was one of the few ways that he was shown love in his family. Tragedy would strike on December 4th, 1972. Cary's 7-year-old brother Stephen was abducted by child molester Kenneth Parnell, and this threw the family into further dysfunction. Cary said that his father cried constantly and that his mother was even more distant than she already was. And the parents really took it hard. They grieved the loss of their son, and Cary felt even more neglected and ignored than he had before. So it was even worse. A lot of people would speculate that Cary's brother being abducted would spark his fantasies into hurting others, but that's not legitimate. Cary himself stated that his fantasy started when he was just 7 years old. Then, when Cary was just 11 years old, he would be molested by his uncle Jesse. He couldn't have known that Jesse had been molesting his own sons for years, and unfortunately, the family trusted Uncle Jesse, and it was said that he was like a second father figure to Cary. The night that Cary was first molested by his Uncle Jesse, he said that he had a sleepover at his uncle's house and that his uncle suggested that he sleep in his bed and he didn't see anything wrong with it. So he did. And he said that he didn't realize that what they had done was wrong at first. So he didn't tell anyone about it. During his childhood, Cary actually did pretty well in school and did get along pretty well with his peers. He did get bullied for the missing bald patches on his head every so often, but overall, he was pretty well liked. He did suffer from erectile dysfunction issues that was suspected to be from psychological issues, so this made him distant from women and girls all the same because he really didn't know how to handle that or fix that issue. However, that doesn't mean that he wasn't interested in girls. He started walking in on his cousins purposely to watch them change or invade other people's privacy for his own personal desires. And at 16, he tried to grope his sister's friend when they slept over. He was unsuccessful, and when the friend yelled at him to get out, he returned a few minutes later naked, where again she yelled at him. Then, when Cary was 18, his brother Stephen would escape and return home after 7 long years. And Initially, he was really happy again, but felt like he was being put on the back burner for Steven because Steven got all the attention and all this publicity, and his parents were so happy. Even though they started butting heads pretty soon after between Cary and Steven, Cary had said that his parents would always side with Steven. Cary felt like he was living in his brother's shadow. Steven was the golden child, the athlete, and hero, while he was just there. Soon after Cary would graduate, he would just get into an endless cycle of not doing much with his life. He didn't go to college or start a successful career. He basically just stayed home and smoked and did dead end jobs over and over and over again. At some point, Cary did seek out psychological help and they put him on OCD medication. And this did help his behaviors, but it stopped the violent dreams, which he didn't like. He had been having these violent dreams and fantasies for so long that he said that he pretty much looked forward to it. And while he felt like he was not in control of all of them, he didn't want them to stop completely. And that's what this medication did. So he stopped taking it entirely. Cary would also move in with his uncle Jesse because, again, he was constantly butting heads with Steven and his parents. Jesse got him a job as a window installer, which provided some stability. In 1986, it came out that Cary's father, Delbert, was molesting his daughters, and it wasn't clear who turned him in, but this definitely divided the family and the community. Then on September 16th, 1989, Stephen, now 24 years old, was riding his motorcycle without a helmet. A car pulled out of a driveway and Stephen hit the car and passed soon thereafter, which again caused its own set of grieving and devastation from the family again. Just a little over a year after when Stephen died, in December of 1990, Uncle Jesse was found laying on the floor with a shotgun hole in his head. Cary had a strong alibi and the case went cold, but I think we know who would have a very good motive for hurting Uncle Jesse, so I guess we'll never know, but personally, I would not be surprised if Cary had killed Uncle Jesse. Over time, Cary's mental state seemed to slowly deteriorate. One spring day in 1995, 33-year-old Cary told his friends that he couldn't handle his thoughts anymore, and later he started punching some wood until his hands bled, and a coworker had to stop him that day. So he wasn't doing well mentally, and it just seemed to be getting worse and worse for him. He told that same coworker that he wanted to drive through a shop and kill everyone. The coworker convinced him to check into the Merced County Mental Health Center, but when the facility said that he needed group therapy, he walked out, so he refused to participate or talk about anything with professionals. In the spring of 1997, Cary would move to Yosemite and become a handyman for the Cedar Lodge Hotel. And at first, this was really good for him. He liked being outside more, and of course, he found a community there and he was away from his family. So at first, this was a great thing for him to do. Cary participated in community events, activities with his coworkers, and overall tried to just build a new life for himself. Cary even dated a waitress who worked at the Cedar Lodge restaurant. We don't know her name, but we do know that she had two daughters whom he doted over. He spoiled them, he would give them beanie babies. I did see an interview where one of the daughters had talked about Cary, and she said that he was always very good to them. 2 years later, though, unfortunately, the fantasies had won, and this was the moment where Cary decided that he was going to fulfill his fantasies. In February 1999, Cary filled a backpack with duct tape, rope, a knife, and a gun, and then on the 15th, he drove to the waitress's house with the plan to kill her and her girls. But when he got there, the property caretaker was there, so he abandoned his plan and headed back to the lodge. When he got back to the lodge, he sat in the hot tub And this is where he set his sights on Erin Murphy, her friend and sister, who were all teenagers at this time, but decided against it when he saw her dad was accompanying them. He didn't want to have to deal with any men in the group. It seemed like Cary had just decided that day he was going to have some sort of victim. So, because he just kept trying. He tried with his girlfriend and her daughters, this family, and later that day he saw a red Pontiac parked outside room 509. He peered in the window and saw a woman and two teenage girls watching TV. And unfortunately, it was just them. They didn't have any men accompanying them that day. The woman was Carol's son, her daughter Julie, and Julie's friend Silvina Peloso from Argentina. Cary put his murder kit in his toolbox and then knocked on the door, saying that he needed to check on something in the room, since he was actually a handyman at the lodge. Carol would end up letting Cary in. He fiddled with some things around the room and then pulled a gun on them. He told them that he was just there to rob them. He restrained all three of them and put Julie and Silvina in the bathroom. He immediately strangled Carol on the bed with a rope. Once she went limp, he carried her body out to the red Pontiac and put her in the trunk. Cary brought the girls back into the bedroom where he would sexually assault and torture them, but it didn't live up to his fantasies. Silvina was too scared to follow Cary's orders, and since he couldn't control her, he strangled her and then put her body in the trunk with Carol's body. Julie was more compliant, but again, it wasn't like the fantasy. Cary had a hard time maintaining an erection, which really soured it for him. When he was done, he packed their belongings and made it look like they had left without checking out. He put Julie in the passenger seat and drove around aimlessly for hours. He said that he wanted to keep her alive, but knew that he couldn't risk her escaping. He parked at the Don Pedro Reservoir Outlook. He carried Julie to the lookout and declared his love for her. It seemed like how he described what happened was more like, a lover's lookout sort of thing instead of something awful that he did to Julie. Because he said that he wrapped her up in a blanket and they sat on the blanket together. And he talks about it like it's this romantic thing instead of the nightmare that he caused. He said after he declared his love for Julie, he again sexually assaulted her, then slashed her throat, hoping that it would kill her faster, but this backfired, and he said that he couldn't look at Julie or do anything more about it. He just waited for her to go silent. After Julie passed, he pushed her body down the hill and left her there under a bush. Cary drove the Pontiac to a remote area where locals dumped old junk and burned their garbage. Cary figured that he would come back later to destroy the evidence. In the meantime, he walked to a payphone where he called a cab for himself. He would return 2 days later and burn the car, hoping to hide all evidence. After Cary burnt the car, he drove 50 miles away to the city of Modesto, and there in a random intersection, he threw Carol's wallet into the road, hoping to throw off investigators. Meanwhile, Carol and Julie's family knew something was wrong. Carol had missed an important appointment. Carol's husband called the car rental service only to discover that the car hadn't been returned, but they had checked out of the lodge days ago. Carol's husband and father went to Yosemite to find them and also alert authorities, who launched a huge search. Carol's husband said that at first he thought it was just a car accident that had happened and that maybe they had driven off the side of a cliff, but that wasn't the case. When authorities investigated room 509, it happened to be Cary who assisted them, but he didn't raise any suspicion. 4 days later, on February 19th, Carol's wallet was found in Modesto in that intersection. Then, on March 19th, someone came across the charred remains of Carol and Silvina. As time went on, Cary grew impatient that they still hadn't found Julie's body, so he drew a map and wrote the message, "We had fun with this one," and sent it off to law enforcement. Cary also paid a child $5 to spit in a cup, and he used the saliva on the envelope to again throw off law enforcement. FBI followed the map to Julie's body and made the connection of the pink blanket she was wrapped in to the lodge. The fibers and the Pontiac dumping led authorities to two brothers, and Cary was delighted that they were taking the fall. The brothers even admitted to being involved. The Pontiac's dumping ground was close to where the brothers had lived, and the fibers were an exact match to, I guess, a blanket that they had in their home. So it was very coincidental, but it worked in Cary's favor at the time. On July 21st, 1999, Cary drove to the community of Foresta where he claimed to have seen Bigfoot. While searching for the beast, he came across 26-year-old Joey Armstrong, who was packing up her car. Cary introduced himself and asked if she'd ever seen Bigfoot. Joey made polite conversation, and when she turned her back on Cary, he pulled a gun on her. Cary led her into the house where he tied her up and put her in the passenger seat of his car. He wanted to take her to a secluded area, but Joey fought. At one point, she jumped out of the moving car window and ran into the woods. Cary caught up with her, but Joey still fought. This enraged Cary, and because he felt he couldn't control her, he instantly decapitated her. He put her head in a stream nearby and left the body. Because remember, in Cary's fantasies, all the women are very compliant and do exactly what they're told, and he is in full control of them. So he did not like what happened with Joey because she fought so hard and was not compliant. Cary planned on going back to Joey's cabin to clean up evidence, but his truck broke down, so he was unable to return. When Joey didn't show up to her friend's home in Sausalito, the friend got worried and reported her missing. Park rangers went to her cabin on July 22nd and quickly realized something was wrong. Joey's cabin door had been left open, music played, and her packed car was still in the driveway. A few hours later, they found Joey's body and her head in a stream about 40 feet away from her body. This time, Cary was pretty sloppy and there was a lot more evidence left behind. There was a broken pair of sunglasses, a red hat, and tire tracks that had all different brands of tires on each wheel from his truck. Police asked locals about unfamiliar vehicles, and two people recounted Cary's blue truck. Park rangers found it and Cary almost immediately. Cary was sunbathing naked on the bank of Merced River, and they immediately started to question him. Unfortunately, they had no solid evidence to arrest Cary, so they let him go, and Cary immediately left for a nudist resort, Laguna del Sol. Police took pictures of Cary's tire tracks and realized that they were a perfect match to the evidence that they found at Joey's murder scene. One of the regulars at the resort Cary was staying at saw on TV that the FBI was looking for Cary, so she called the hotline. FBI arrested Cary while he was having breakfast. While interrogating Cary, he said that he would confess on 3 different conditions. The first being that he stayed in a prison that was close to his parents, so that way they could visit. The second was that his parents got the reward money since he was confessing. And the last one was honestly just horrific. He wanted explicit content of children. Now, luckily, this would never happen. Cary eventually confessed without these conditions being met. Cary would plead not guilty by reason of insanity for the murders, but he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Now, currently, there's a moratorium on the death penalty in California, so Cary is still alive. He is at the San Quentin prison in California, and I can only hope that he gets what he deserves because what he did to those women was awful. And that was the story of today, guys. For today's meal, I decided to make a filet mignon with blackberry reduction, wild mushroom risotto, grilled asparagus, and a honey roasted peach tart with mascarpone. Let me know how you felt about today's meal and today's episode. If you liked it, please like and subscribe and give me a follow. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.